Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show here on Channel 1 Television. On The Point of View, we pick the right topics, get the right guests, ask them relevant questions on issues that matter to you. It's a big night tonight because the lawyers are all over the social media trends. Ghana graduated another 824 professional lawyers, and there's a big debate going on. Do we have too many lawyers in Ghana for a population of 30 million? We'll tell you what the numbers are saying. We have a debate which is very good and interesting. We have 5 people. 2 are professional lawyers, 2 are professional engineers, and 1 is both. And we are going to discuss tonight, do we really even need to be having a discussion around lawyers, engineers, or that kind of thing? What type of thinking do we need to propel national development? And whichever profession you are in, how can we get you to think the right way to bring development to our nation? That's basically the topic tonight. It's going to be very exciting. I have 1 lady and 4 men all in the next hour. Stay with us.
Good evening and welcome to the greatest show on earth.
This is a people's game. They will be bubbling about this one for weeks and months to come.
Let's go! Lights, camera, action. Put your mind to it, let the lights of truth.
It's on SuperSport all season long. Pay your subscription today. Dial star 759 hash. Available on DSTV and GoTV.
Kwame and his uncle are almost here.
Wait a minute. This one too, your friend Kwame.
Wait, Kwame. As in the same Kwame again?
Yes, mommy.
I'm
The second coming.
into all this tension just to reintroduce that broke boy from Kaswa.
Why would you deceive the family like this again?
Now I understand the whole delay. Troll from Kaswati. Why wouldn't he be late? Or be later?
Of course.
Star 712 hash, star 712 hash. You go be the luckiest. Go be from to be luckiest. From not the cause she be luckiest. Yeah, you go be luckiest. No matter what you're luckiest. Everybody go be the luckiest.
That's Kwame!
Senya God the boom. If you put it toye, so would the coming of the Son of Man be. Is that his car?
Everywhere. Luckiest everywhere.
Dial star 712 hash. Choose your ticket. Enter your lucky number. Follow the prompts and let destiny handle the rest.
This promotion is regulated by the NLA on the Caritas platform.
So tonight we're having a debate. It's not just an academic debate, it's actually a serious debate because globally people are talking about this. In the US, they're debating China being an engineering state and US having so many lawyers. In fact, of the 16 first presidents of the US, 13 were lawyers. 3 were soldiers. They didn't have any engineer in that group. Between 2002 and 2007, almost everybody in the Central Committee of China's leadership was an engineer. And since the days of Deng Xiaoping, they've had engineers running the country except 1. So clearly, there are some societies that tilt towards engineering, and there are some societies that tilt towards law. This debate has been brought forward because somebody wrote an article asking, how can a country with such poor drainage and not enough infrastructure be graduating so many lawyers? Apparently, 824 people came out of law school and were made professional lawyers. A big, big discussion. So who am I talking to? First, I have an engineer who is a fellow of the Ghana Institution of Engineering. She's in the person of Engineer Ya Okujeto. She's with me here in the studio. Yeah, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bernard.
Great to have you. So I noticed I said Institution of Engineering, not engineers. Okay, you explain all of that. You are an engineer, right?
Yes, I am.
Which type of engineer are you?
Electrical engineering.
Wonderful. I also have a man who was on the show less than a month and a half ago, Dr. Hini Ekukwapong, who is an engineer, but he likes to talk about everything. I think he even did an article on Constitution. Hini, thanks for joining us. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening,
So
Bernard.
you're an engineer, right? What kind of engineer are you?
I started out nuclear engineering and then ended up with chemical engineering.
And you still have time to write about constitutional change and stuff like that. That's amazing. Wonderful. Thanks for joining us. He's joining us from New York. So yeah, good to have you. We have also one of my favorite lawyers. Is called David Ofosu-Dotte. He teaches lawyers. Actually, some of the people who graduated this weekend or whenever, those who became lawyers, he trained some of them. And he's also the founder of the Pan-African law firm, AB and David. David, thanks for joining the program. Good evening.
Thank you, Bernard. Good evening.
Even though you are a lawyer, I think you are much more than a lawyer, correct? You do so much more. But for now, we are saying you're a lawyer. Is that okay for today's show?
It's fine. I have two other professions, but that's fine.
Oh, that would be nice to hear later on. Wonderful. I also have Dr. Kweku Buedu, who started out as an engineer. I think he's still an engineer, but he's also a lawyer. And he designed a master's program for the Faculty of Law. I think it's IP Law. Okay. I think that's the title. Dr. Kweku Buedu.
IT Law.
IT Law. Is it IP or IT? IT.
IT, Information Technology Law.
Wonderful. So you are an engineer who decided that you wanted to add a lawyer to your engineering profession, correct?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful. Our last but not least is Ace Ankuma. He'll join us shortly. So let me start with, oh, Ace is on, okay. So Ace Ankuma, you know, there are some professions. When you think of a journalist, think of Komla Dumo. When you think of a lawyer, think of Ace Ankuma. So I think Ace is a lawyer's lawyer. Yeah. Ace, good evening. Thanks for joining the program.
Good evening. Thanks for us.
Wonderful. Let me start with because she took the trouble to come into the studio.
True.
There are not many women engineers out there.
If you
in Ghana?
In Ghana, if you take a percentage, we're probably currently at about 10 to 20%.
Wow.
Of the, I would even dare say 20. So there really aren't a lot of us practicing. We are churning out a lot from the schools, but we are not too many practicing.
Do we know how many engineers are actively in Ghana?
So if you look at our membership numbers, we're sitting somewhere at about 13,000.
Oh, that's a lot too.
But
13,000.
in practice
Okay.
and in license, we're probably hovering somewhere in the maybe 7,000 or so. So this
So this is not correct.
This is not quite accurate.
Because this is 5,174.
Yeah, and it was looking at what the Engineering Council had, I think, at the time, members in good standing. But let's not focus too much on this. I think what we have is sitting somewhere around 7,000 to 8,000.
7,000 to 8,000.
Yes, and if you look at, for instance, the question you asked about women, the percentage, like I said, is about 10% across board, and it's not
so
very
7,000 to 8,000.
Yes.
Wonderful. Let me just get the numbers in relation to lawyers from Dr. Kweku Buedu, because Doc, I interviewed you on this a while back. Do we know how many lawyers we have in Ghana in good standing or basically practicing?
Well, in the case of lawyers, we have fairly accurate data. I would say that since 1877 to date, Ghana has trained 11,400 lawyers, and currently we have about 8,600 lawyers active. This is not adding the 800 or so that were called to the bar over the weekend.
Did you say since 1877?
Yes.
Wow. 11,400 lawyers.
Yes, we have. Our data is accurate because we have taken the trouble to actually capture all the data from 1877 to date. And this number, it's because I'm sure you've heard the debate about some lawyers wanting to form other associations, but generally, lawyers belong to the Ghana Bar Association. So Ghana Bar Association data is almost the accurate data.
Second question to you, has there been an increase in the number of lawyers being trained in the past few years? Because I think this debate has become fashionable because people are claiming that more and more people want to become lawyers and more people are coming out. Do you have any historical data to prove this point?
It looks like that may be the case. We can get you the accurate data, but as I told you, from 1877 to date, we have 11,000 lawyers and we have 8,000 presently active. So it tells you that most of the lawyers have been trained in recent times. So most lawyers are probably like 30 years old or younger. There are few lawyers that are older than. If we say at the bar, if you say old, we mean for how many years of practice, not the physical age of the person. So we have a few lawyers between the ages 30 and 50, but most lawyers are under 30. But in recent times, the numbers, we are probably churning out like approximately 1,000 lawyers a year in recent times.
1,000 lawyers a year. I see.
Yeah, almost. Yeah. So you have 800 over the past weekend, but we have had some years that they have exceeded 1,000 slightly, and then there are 2 calls per year. So if you tend to add the numbers, you get approximately 1,000.
Is that similar to what engineering numbers we have?
Yeah, so I think at the beginning you asked how we're now an institution, and it's because we're not only licensing professional engineers, so we do have the craftsmen, we have the artisans, we have the professional technologists that we are all licensing. And again, just as the lawyers have it, if you look at the number of members we've had over the years, that's where we're sitting at 13,000 and over. The question is, there are 2 institutions in Ghana licensing engineers, and then we do have a regulatory body that regulates us. So with the 2 bodies that are licensing, how many of us are in good standing, how many of us are truly registered members of these institutions, and that's where we're looking at this 8,000 number that we're talking about.
Okay, so first things first. When I posted this topic, one of my favorite people, H. Kwesi Prempeh, sent me a WhatsApp message. And I'm going to read it because it sounded as if the topic was not even well structured, right? It was like, I mean, what are we on about? What is the point of... Basically, it was an oversimplification of the issues, all right? So first question to the panel would be, is this even a question worth debating? Right. I.e., lawyers versus engineers. What does Ghana's development need? I'll start with you. Is it a worthwhile conversation? Starting with you.
I think first of all, we need to address this by acknowledging the fact that this conversation is not really about who is more important than the other. If we are true to ourselves, the 2 professions have a symbiotic relationship.
Okay.
So we're not here to establish who has more of an important role than the other, but it's more of where we are in our current dispensation as a country and what we truly need. And I think we need to be true to ourselves and kind of acknowledge the challenges we have. I won't call it a debate per se, but it's a very important discussion to have because we currently talk about the development of this country from several points of view. And in all those aspects that we mentioned, it requires the need of an engineer. Same way it does require the need of a lawyer as well. Because again, when you look at all legal documents that engineers have to put together for a contract, bill of quantities, etc., it requires a legal benchmark. And so the 2 come side by side. But we talk about industrialization, we talk about the fact that where we are as a nation, we need to grow beyond being an import-driven country. And what does that mean? It means that we need to ensure that our factories, our industries are working. And the true essence of that lies mainly with the engineers. And so I think that's where the kind of debates we need to have. But let's be clear that it's not really about who's more important.
So for you, it's a good discussion to have, but it's not somebody's won, somebody's lost.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, so let me start with the other engineer. Hine, what do you think? Is this a well-structured topic? Because H. Kwesi Prempeh said, Bernard, the question arises because we tend to think of development in terms of brick and mortar. And then he says, if brick and mortar, then it's an engineer's job, presumably. But why not the architects? Then he says, he ends his own submission, but he ends by saying that we need to structure the debate better and we shouldn't make it an either-or. All right? What do you think? Is this a good discussion to have at all?
Yeah, it is a good discussion to have only because that's perception that people have. That is what people are feeling. And that's what people are seeing. So whenever the country is having challenges and struggles, obviously you always have to ask yourself who really is at the top making decisions. and what is their background and how come problems are not being solved. I think, maybe with what my fellow engineer said, if you look at the stage at which Ghana is in terms of development, right? We all know that if you look at development economics, one of the big things that's very critical about it is this whole idea about total factor productivity. And what happens is that when you mention engineering is not just people who have sort of graduated and sort of been licensed. You're actually talking about people at the bottom who are electricians all the way through sort of being artisans and being able to repair stuff, sort of that angle. If Apple wants to come and set up a factory in Ghana, could they find 200 people who can actually assemble an iPhone, do that type of electronics engineering? Maybe not, right? So I think it's a good discussion to have, because basically we have to step back and say, okay, what is the quality of the people that we're producing? It's not necessarily lawyers to engineers, but it's really the type of minds that are being put out there, right? I tend to think that there are some areas where, when it comes to our legal profession, we need to be more rigorous, and we are not rigorous, right? I've had that discussion with Kwesi Prempeh and whatnot. So maybe later on we can sort of talk about it. But the perception is there, and people are looking at it. So perception is reality. So it's a discussion you must have.
All right, let me come to David. David, when I called you earlier, you said, incidentally, we're discussing this with somebody, the idea that we seem to be having a lot of lawyers. And I'm sure this discussion was between you lawyers. So is the discussion relevant for Ghana at this point? And what are your opening thoughts, David?
Every discussion that relates to development is relevant. So relevance, yes, but is the premise of the discussion right? That's another matter altogether. And incidentally, I wasn't talking to only lawyers. Just so we set it in context, as you know, the world is a very multidisciplinary world. Incidentally, I mean, as a person, 70% of what I do actually relates to engineering and infrastructure. So I'm always in the middle of engineers, even though I'm a lawyer. But I want to give you some context. Now, if you add the 824 that were called today to the 9,505 that Dr. Boyd was talking about, to the number that was existing, you have about 9,505, about 7,300 of which are in Accra. Now, the lawyer to a person ratio in Ghana is about 1,000. It's about one lawyer to an average of about 3,600 people. For Kenya, you have 1 to 6,200 people. For the US, you have 4 lawyers to 1,000 people. Now, on the surface of it, that looks like data for Ghana that you may say you have too many lawyers. But I'll give you some other statistics that you have to set in context. Forgotten the name of the lady co-panelist, the engineer.
Yeah.
She said there are about 13,000 engineers. Yes, 13,000 engineers. And Dr. Gwedu just told you that since 1877, there are only 11,000 lawyers. It doesn't mean the engineers are more than lawyers. It doesn't mean that. The context which is important is for us to check what other professions are churning out numbers that are not necessarily the topic of the day, because they are not, for want of a better word, called in the manner in which lawyers are called. I'll give you just 2 examples. The university graduates about 4,500 MBA students in a year.
Wow.
And master students, yes. And of the master students, about 1,880 have MBAs. That's more than the number of lawyers. Now, next year you are going to be surprised, because the students in the class in part 1 that I taught are about 1,500. So if I take the average pass ratio, next year we are going to graduate more than 1,000 lawyers. But even that will still be below that of MBA graduates. Then I take agriculture. If you take the total number of first degree graduates in Ghana, it's about 109,000, of which about 3% are in agric alone. That gives you over 3,000 average of agric students. Now you have a country where doctors and medical professionals, and I'm talking about doctors, people who are in high demand. We have the doctor to patient ratio here very, very low. Yet we are unable to place them, give them the adequate resources, and they leave. So the real question, Bernard, is not a question of which profession is more. There are three questions I think we need to be discussing. One is, what type of development and growth are we looking for? And which professions do we want to produce more of? Two, how do we make it attractive for people to voluntarily go into those professions? Because don't forget that of the lawyers who were called, and I taught a lot of them are actually engineers, quantity surveyors, civil engineers, etc., including scientists and physicists. Because law allows itself or turns itself for it to become a second profession. So that's the first question we need to ask. What type of development and how do we channel and make it attractive? Two, how do we make that type of sector we want to trigger, for example, manufacturing, production engineering, etc. How do we make it employable? How do we make those professions employable? And how do we stimulate growth and demand in those directions? If we don't, then, at the end of the day, it's not a question of too many lawyers. I believe if I were to give you the statistics for journalists, you will find out that we're actually churning out more journalists than lawyers. So that's the context within which I see this.
Wow. And thanks for the three questions. What type of development do we want? How do we make it attractive for people to actually go into that field? And how do we make those in the field more employable? I'll come back to those. Let me take A. Sankuma, who is a pure lawyer. What's your opening thoughts on this debate? And I don't think I've seen you write anything on this yet.
Oh, I have.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what a pure lawyer is. I have, in the 30-something years of practice, I spent almost half my life, of my legal life, teaching. And so I have about 15 years of legal education under my belt, both from University of Ghana and from the Ghana School of Law. But I think that my friend and brother David has cut this in a very good stead. I really what I would have to add. What is the nation's development strategy is concerning graduates, and what opportunities are we providing for them? Statistically, it is untrue that that more lawyers are being produced than the other comparable professions. It's almost about the same. The lawyer population ratio is nothing alarming, and it should not be alarming. Having many people going into professions is not necessarily alarming, right? Listen, law manifests itself in probably 4 distinct ways. There's the disputes attorney, which many people think is the vast majority of lawyers, but is untrue. There are transactional attorneys, there are advisory attorneys, there are the academic lawyers, those who teach, etc., etc. And so it is not really accurate. And before we get into this, let's ask, what are the real numbers? And I'm glad that some of the panelists have provided the numbers. Is it with the training, or is it that the jobs exist? If we shut down the law school tomorrow, and can we send everybody who applies to read law to read engineering? And will they come out with engineering? When they come out with engineering degrees, do they immediately solve Ghana's problems? Are there even jobs for them to occupy? What we have had is a haphazard growth where politicians have done firefighting and fixed immediate problems with very little long-term thinking. And when the issue comes up, we discuss it for a week or two, we appear on your esteemed program, and then that is the end of the story. That is what we are having. Look, KNUST has a course in law. One would have thought that a law course from a University of Science and Technology will shape people who will come in and do science and technology lawyering. And so the courses to be offered in KNUST law will be like medical law, engineering law, the construction law, etc., to pick the science, the STEM courses. So you have people who understand the legal underpinnings of these STEM courses. But no, they are offering the same grammar law as the University of Ghana is offering, conflict of laws, etc., etc. We have failed to think as a nation. We have failed to be strategic, to be deliberate, intentional about the kinds of graduates we get.
graduate, the numbers depend on the number of seats that exist. And so once we fill the seat, that is the issue. When there was the backlog of the schools, how do we fix it? We force the law schools to train in cohorts. So if you go to any of the 3 campuses, they have 3 cohorts, Bernard. 3 cohorts. Some go to school Monday to Tuesday, and they are done. Wednesday to Thursday, Friday to Saturday. 2 days of legal training. My worry is not the numbers. My worry is the quality that we are getting, and the fact that the legal market is still the buyer's market. And so the employers like me get to choose. I can tell you that we originally had just 5 or 6 seats available for pupillage. We interviewed over 60. We were forced to expand to 10. That means that for just one firm, for each seat available, 6 to 7 people applied. And so there are more qualitative discussions for us to have. If we trained 5,000 engineers a year, and we can do it, where are the jobs? What are they going to do? And people seem to forget this. Law, David is so right, has become a second the profession. And part of what we're seeing in the law school, as at the time I was teaching, when people hit age 50 and they see retirement beckoning in 10 years, they move to study law. They are working, they have money, they can pay the fees, they stay out of class, 2 months to exams, they photocopy their notes, they study, they write, they pass. You see, the country must decide what it wants. Engineering costs more to train than lawyering. And I'll be honest about it. What does it take to train law students? 2 key things. 1, facilities, which is brick and mortar, chair, table, but library and a properly equipped library. And then 2, faculty, the people who are well trained to teach it. So, but when we decided to open up the base, where several schools produce LLB students, and we didn't touch the outlet, which is the law school, the bifurcated the training, the law school level, it created a mass, like a chock-a-block, a chokehold, and with a small window of opening, which was choked. This has gone to Supreme Court. We have had several occasions to fix it. We have been unable to do it. So, Ben, my point is, as I summarize, it is not who is well, in fact, I don't even think the numbers are relevant. Where are the jobs? What is the relevance of that profession? If we produce an engineer who then abandons the engineering field the next day and is sitting in a bank or is quickly converting into a lawyer and is doing I put it to you in court, what have we gained? What is the strategic thinking of the nation?
All right.
I think that's where the issue is.
Thank you, Ace. I'll take a short break. When I come back, I'll ask the only person who is both an engineer and a lawyer on the show, why he decided to add law to his engineering profession. They didn't have enough engineering to do. But I think there are lots of substantive questions that have been raised as well on the nation's strategic priority. And also, what does the training equip you with? And what type of thinking do we need more in the country, in our public discourse, in our parliament, within our ministries? I think that's where the discussion is going as well. We're live on The Point of View tonight, discussing one of the 2 noble professions, law, engineering, and medicine. Stay with us.
Announcing Ghana's first unlimited photocopier leasing. Yes, from just 983 Ghana cedis, you can lease a multifunctional photocopier and print unlimited. Yes, unlimited and free paper every month. Guess what? That's not all. Toners, repairs, and maintenance all are free. And oh, I'm not kidding at all. And we cover the whole country. Yes, the whole country. What are you waiting for? Just visit us at www.valexlease.com or call 0244 644048. Remember, terms and conditions apply. Valex Lease, affordable document management solutions.
When malaria strikes your home, it strikes everything. Sleep, peace, and even work. Don't miss deadlines because of malaria. Don't lose your sleep to malaria. No more endless worry. because of malaria.
Olenoko, enough!
Fight malaria back with Vegetem. Vegetem is effective, safe, and fast-acting against malaria. With its alu-alu packaging, Vegetem tablets stays effective right to the very last tablets. Vegetem is also available in suspension for children. Vegetem, tough on malaria, easy on you. If symptoms persist after 3 days, please consult a doctor. This advert is FDA approved.
Kwame and his uncle are almost here.
Wait a minute. This one too, your friend Kwame.
Wait, Kwame. As in the same Kwame again?
Yes, Mommy.
I'm the second coming. Into all this tension just to reintroduce that broke boy from Kaswa.
Why would you deceive the family like this again?
Now I understand the whole delay. Troll from Kaswati. Why wouldn't he be late? Obey you later.
Of course.
Star 712 hash, star 712 hash. Yeah, you go be the luckiest. Coffee from Georgia be luckiest. From not the block, she be luckiest. Yeah, you go be luckiest. No matter why you're luckiest. Everybody go be the luckiest.
That Kwame!
Send your God the apple boom. If you put it toye, so would the coming of the son of man be. Is that his car?
Dial star 712 hash. Choose your ticket. Enter your lucky number. Follow the prompt and let destiny handle the rest.
This promotion is regulated by the NLA on the Caritas platform.
Welcome back. So tonight we are trying to make sense of a big social media conversation about lawyers. Certainly it's become more fashionable to be a lawyer. Their photo shoots when they graduate are very nice to watch. And a lot of people are entering law, at least from the past 5 years, we've seen the numbers grow. It's very interesting that prior to 2020, there was a whole discussion about whether the law school was even allowing enough people to enter. And there was an uproar when so many of them failed. Now we are saying there are too many, so we've come a long way. Who are my guests? Engineer Yaa Okujeto is a fellow of the Ghana Institution of Engineering. He's a hardcore engineer. I also have Engineer Hini Eku Kwapong, who is an engineer as well. I have David Ofosu Dote, who has many lives, but he's a founder of a law firm. He's a lawyer, but he came from a sort of non-legal background, but he works with a lot of engineers. Then I have A. Sankoma. I call him a lawyer's lawyer. Now, my fifth guest is Dr. Kweku Buedu. Now, he's the only person on the show who wears two hats because he's a full engineer. So he's a member of your institution, a member of the bar as well. So, Doc, it's been alleged that people come to law when they want to retire and want something else to do. So, as a fully qualified engineer, your story may help us. What motivated you to study law? And which of the two do you consider yourself to be, a lawyer or engineer?
Well, it's true. I retired at 45 and decided to become a lawyer. And I'll tell you why. And I'll take a rather long route. Now, where did Google start? America. Where did Twitter start? America. Where did Facebook start? America. Where did TikTok, the Chinese company, where did it start? America. Just keep going. And if you look at the people behind these technologies, a lot of them are Europeans. In fact, computer technology was given to us by Charles Babbage, a UK citizen. So why is it that these companies, these technologies are starting in America and not in Europe, but they are being started by Europeans? And I can show you I can take you to Act 843, our data privacy law, and show you and give you the answer in that act. The simple answer is the kind of laws that America passes and the kind of laws that Europe passes creates the environment as to whether you can start this business here or there. And it is quite natural for us in Ghana, once a law is passed in Europe, we just copy and paste. So, like I said, I can take Act 843 and show you why Google cannot start in Ghana and Google cannot run in Ghana. I can take you to Act 769, the National Communications Act, and show you why I am bold enough to say on television that every telecommunication company in this country is a corrupt company.
Wow.
I have no proof, I have no evidence, but circumstantial evidence tells me that if you go to Act 769,
wow,
the president of Ghana appoints the head of the NCA, appoints the board of NCA, appoints the officers of NCA, appoints the staff of NCA. So by our law, any telecommunication company that has to operate in Ghana has to be nice to the politicians. So it is very easy for an investor to set outside Ghana, take Act 769, decide whether I'm going to Ghana or I'm not going to Ghana. If I'm going to go to Ghana, then I should be prepared to have nice relationships with politicians. And you know what that means, to be nice relationship with politicians. Okay. So, and again, back to Act 843, you will notice that America is unable to meet the data privacy standards of Europe.
Yeah, that's true.
So Europe does not admit America. So Europe has had to pass a specific law to admit Americans. What these things led me to was, my first profession was in computer science. I was a programmer for quite some years. And then based on a need, I moved to engineering. And after quite some practice, I thought I was at Zenith, because I noticed that not only should we push engineering in our country, but engineering policy is very important.
Okay.
Because by Europe not getting the policy right, they are unable to attract these companies. So if we want engineering to thrive, if we want investment to come into this country, you need to have your policies right. And how do you get your policies right when you don't understand the engineering, when you don't understand the technology? So this is what led me to study law. I just thought, look, let me leave, and then pursue policy. This is how I ended up in
now,
engineering.
Thanks for sharing this. I wanted to just ask, could you have done it the other way? A lawyer who wanted to become an engineer, and you are 45, you are doing well in law school, and you say, oh, I want to learn engineering, so let me go and start programming. Do you know anybody who has used that route? Or it's more the easier route to start as an engineer and get into law?
Well, having traversed computer science, electrical engineering, and law, I will tell you, is an irreversible process. Simply because now I have, don't get me wrong, I have sat in class with some people who are today lawyers, and they are engineers and they don't even know.
Wow.
You see their way of thinking, you see the way they do things, and you know that this was the kind of classmate I had when I was in engineering school. So it's not about the quality of persons, but the nature of training that we give. So by the time you go through law training, if you have to come to engineering, that is an impossible task, because you receive training in a way that now to go back to the differential equations and the multiple integrals, and it's that's why I say that it's an irreversible path. Yeah. However, if you are a practitioner from computer science engineering, you want to go to law, it is possible to do it because you then have to adapt to this new environment of having to read volumes and volumes of work, which
All
is
right.
something that we don't do.
So let me
in
stay with the
engineering.
point of how engineers are trained. I'm going to ask the two pure engineers how engineers are trained. So it's suggesting that the way engineers are trained, it's difficult to reverse the process. But you can be an engineer, become a lawyer. So how were you trained and how do you think?
So I think for many people who know my trajectory, I started off, as a child, I was a child advocate.
Okay.
So when I say I was a child advocate, everybody who was around me knew that I was on the path to do something like international relations, law, or something along those lines. Because as a child, I was totally working in the advocacy of children's rights, traveling around with United Nations here and there. But at a point in my life, I was more inclined towards the mathematical equations than I was towards reading. And I had a bit of affinity towards science and towards mathematics. But I also remember that the people who were in my life who said exactly the same thing as he just said, that it's easier to divert when you've done engineering into any other field. So if you do enjoy doing the mathematical equations, why don't you consider something in the sciences? So my thinking, and I think the fundamentals of my training, was built on more of equations, etc. But I've always had an advocate mindset. To be honest with you, I always say that engineering is built around standards and specifications. And standards and specification is what will actually engineer your mindset. So at the beginning of any engineer's life, if you do not have standards as a person, it becomes the biggest challenge. So for instance, I always say that in Ghana, one of the big things that I think is keeping us from progressing is the fact that, let's use the simple sockets that we have in homes. If you go to America, America is still stuck on the type of sockets that they use. If you go to Britain, Britain is still using the 13-amp sockets, which is standard. Ghana, we do have what we call the universal sockets. And if you go and actually look into it to find out the code that actually protects us as a nation, there really isn't one that certifies that. But it's all over the market. We need to truly have a certain foundation or standard. And it shows in all our mindset. As individuals, our mindsets are not built around standards. So I think for me, my training, again, someone would say, I went to school in the US, but I came back to Ghana because I truly believe in Ghana. My mindset has always been to ensure that we're building around standards. We're thinking with code and standards in mind. And I think that's the foundation of every engineer's thought.
So engineering is a system of thinking.
It's a system.
It's a way of thinking.
Absolutely.
And a way of living.
Absolutely. And I also believe exactly in what our senior engineer just said, that once you've become an engineer and your fundamentals are right, it's easier to branch into other fields, and which is why it's actually evident in how we're training our engineers. So you find out that we're churning more engineers out of our institutions. We're not retaining them in industry, and that's because other industries are able to soak them in. Banks love engineers. There are so many fields that do love engineers.
FMCG companies,
Everybody.
a lot of CEOs are engineers.
Absolutely. So there are so many ways that engineers can actually progress, and that's why we are struggling with the fundamentals. But I also think we need to look at how we are, like our NDPC, how we are constituting our commissioners. And I was looking at the list and how the nation is actually thinking in terms of development. Do we truly believe that we need to have an engineering mindset in our national development plan?
So you don't think we have enough engineers in public policy?
There's nothing stopping engineers from going into public policy, but why are we not there? I think that's the question.
Let me talk to the other engineer. Add a bit to the way engineers think. And, you know, they always give this example of China. I was listening to a podcast earlier where they basically said that they contrasted China to the US. China as an engineering state and America as a lawyer society. And I mean, basically they think the Chinese are engineering not just roads, but if you want to engineer population growth and they want to engineer the society. How different is an engineer's training from other professions? And why do you think we need more engineering minds in public discourse?
Right. So I would say this. So I personally think the fundamental difference is systems. systems and the way engineers are trained, right? Engineers are actually trained to sort of look at systems as the way they work, understand them, and basically work around them. I'll give you an example. I've seen so many actually people from the liberal arts session and humanities session who have actually crossed over to be engineers and scientists, right? I mean, think about it. If you talk about law and sort of negotiation, logic, and whatnot, I mean, one of the greatest guys who made a big contribution to logic and sort of reasoning is George Bull. George Bull is the guy who came up with Boolean logic and Boolean algebra. He was not an engineer, he was a philosopher, right? So I think really it's really more about the engineering mind. The thing that's so different about China is not so much that they have a lot of engineering graduates or degreed engineers, as much as they have leaders who have actually managed systems from the village up to the township to the sort of regional province level before you get to the top, right? A lot of them actually, believe it or not, have legal degrees from American universities, right? Lee Kuan Yew had a legal degree from Harvard, right? So, but it probably points to what A. Sankuma was talking about, the quality of the law degree that we are actually putting out there. The perception that people are getting that somehow there are too many engineers is coming from the frustration with the legal system. I mean, come on, if you have a case in court in Ghana and it's been 18 years, every time you see a group of lawyers graduate, you're gonna throw up a fit, you know, because here's your case in the court and whatnot. I remember, you know, Dr. Bwedu mentioned this. I remember when I was working on some of the legislation with the government, if Mangoa was not there, the rest of the lawyers that I worked with, it was very difficult because they were not as mature as someone like Ace or Mangoa, right? Act 930, the Banking Act. I mean, there's not even a single required, basically, it's like if somebody does a crime, there's this whole concept of units, and units is like 5 cities and whatnot. So who put that together, right? I don't know. But what it is that the Chinese leadership have gotten to the top because they've managed systems after systems after systems after systems. And that is why engineering minds actually are. So we don't necessarily have to produce engineers by degree, but if we can find a way where literally we have systems thinking, our systems understanding, the way of approaching problem solving and all the stuff, then we know we can actually have the quality of minds that actually will make sure that we get the right thinking and solve the right problems, right? So that's how I personally, I mean, systems engineering, I think, is the core piece that the engineers have the benefit.
So I've heard three things from the engineers. I've heard standards and specifications. I've heard systems thinking, and I've also heard policy from the engineers. David, when I talk to your students, a lot of them say they enjoy your class more than most other classes, particularly in the School of Law. And they say you are very different. And of course, I've worked with you in some of your programs. You tend to be very eclectic. So tell me a bit about your background and how come a lawyer like you, even though you are competent in law, you seem to be so much more, right? Just give me a bit about the thinking, because everybody's talking about the way we think. It's not about the profession, it's about how we think. How have you evolved into such a great thinker? And was it the pre-law you did? Was it the built environment? What is it that makes you think the way you think?
Well, Bernard, I trained originally as a transportation planner, and among other things, also did an MBA. And because I worked in the public service, and because I have worked with engineers most of the time, it affects how you do your things. But I think it's important we said this. A nation must make a conscious decision as to how it wants to train the people who build its future. In the US, for example, you are only a lawyer after having first attained another degree. So you find that there are a lot of people who are nuclear scientists, medical practitioners, physicists who do law. In Ghana, you could go to school straight from, sixth form as it were, or SSS. There was a time I think Legon tried to do it after the degree, and then we reversed, etc. So that conscious decision is one of the things we need to decide as a nation. Now, the only time that Ghana has had a very comprehensive approach to planning is when in 1994 Vision 2020 was done. I haven't seen any such comprehensive. Even in Vision 2020, there is no conscious chapter that deals with the ratio of graduates we want to produce in every sector. Whereas if you go to China, you will find that the Chinese have consciously decided that they want mathematicians, they want engineering sciences, they want high-end production engineers. We don't have that. Now, I think the whole thing boils down to something. It's about the national psyche and our approach to things and how we train. ACE has already made reference to how we train lawyers in KNUST, for example. I tend to be with engineers all the time, as I said. But law itself, the way law trains you to think is not different from the way engineering trains you to think. Logical, sequential, and standards. By the way, one of the most famous lawyers of all time, Lord Denning, a famous British judge, was a mathematician. Wow. And the logic of his reasoning is evident in everything that he does. And that's the way we need to be structuring our things as a people. A conscious decision. I will just give you a couple of examples. If I look at what are the professions which will be demanded in Ghana and in Africa between now and 2030 or 2030 and 2035, it will be people who are in critical minerals, people who are in value addition, production engineering. But check how many universities are producing these courses. The number of faculties to be licensed by the accreditation board are licensing universities who are looking for money. So they are doing MBAs, and I've told you, they are producing more MBAs and other social science graduates than they are producing lawyers. So it's about money. Even our traditional universities who are supposed to be doing engineering and others are actually producing more of these because they look at money as a result of lack of funding. So there's no conscious effort in, for example, research, etc. So it's something we need to do. Now, let me land on this. It's a question of how we converge. In 2024, incidentally, just about a year ago, I was the annual guest lecturer for the Ghana Institution of Engineering, and they gave me the freedom to choose a topic, and I spoke on re-engineering Ghana's transformation polygon, a convergence of ethics, engineering, law, and finance. And I argued, and this video is online, you can look at it. I argued that there ought to be a convergence of these three professions working ethically in order that we will transform. And I use engineering model to look at the four aspects of transformation, whether you are dilating, you are translating, whether you are reflecting. And these models can tell you that if you want to attain exponential growth, you need to rethink how you approach it and make a conscious effort. Unfortunately, and this has nothing to do with just law or engineering alone, our professionals as a whole have relinquished the role they play as elites to shape the future of society and left everything to politicians who then decide that everything must be done politically. And as a result, people find law attractive because it makes it easier for you to argue your way into politics. In any society where politics become more attractive than professionals, this is what you have. So it's not about law. It's just because we are called to the bar and there's an annual ceremony. And that there are many other professions who are more than lawyers. We have to have a national consciousness as to what we want to achieve and how we channel people into that direction and how we make them employable.
Re-engineering Ghana's transformation polygon. That's amazing. Coming from a lawyer, superb. I'll take a final break. When I come back, I'll speak to Ace because there's a sense in which my personal feeling is that Ghana is very loyally. I do interviews every day, and a lot of the people who are available to talk for political parties are legal people. And we use a lot of legalese, although we are a very lawless society. So I want him to explain what's going on there, because it seems as if law is one of the most respected professions in Ghana now. Probably prior to the past, I mean, a few years ago, so teachers in the olden days. So Ace, I have a few questions for you, and I have a final thought for each of my panel members. This is the point of view we're live. We have a lot of comments as well. One of the interesting comments says, Bernard, the argument has been settled. And I'm just going to read it. Ernest sent that comment before I take my break. He says, it's easy for, let me just read. He says, Bernard, the debate is settled. I am an engineer and practice by doing contract administration. An engineer can read and practice law, but a lawyer can never do engineering. So the debate is settled. Close the program. It's not a debate. It's a discussion about how to get a better society. Stay with us.
Kwame and his uncle are almost here.
Wait a minute. This one too, your friend Kwame.
Wait, Kwame. As in the same Kwame again?
Yes, mommy.
I'm the second coming. Into all this tension, just to reintroduce that broke boy from Kaswa.
Why would you deceive the family like this again? Huh?
Now I understand the whole delay. Trotro from Kaswati. Why wouldn't he be late? Obeying later.
Of course.
Star 712 hash, star 712 hash. You go be the luckiest. Coffee from Georgia be luckiest. From not the pure cause she be luckiest. Yeah, you go be lucky, luckiest. Nobody know why you're lucky. Everybody go be that luckiest.
That's Kwame!
Send your God the apple boom. If you put it toye, so would the coming of the son of man be. Is that his car?
Dial star 712 hash. Choose your ticket. Enter your lucky number. Follow the prompts and let destiny handle the rest.
This promotion is regulated by the NLA on the Caritas platform.
Well, welcome back. This is To The Point of View. Let me read a comment from my friend George Sapong, who is a journalist and lawyer. And by the way, a lot of journalists are becoming lawyers. He says, Ben, I think the 2 election petitions on primetime television did a lot to inspire interest in law. Mao Zedong, who launched the Great Leap Forward for China, studied philosophy and Marxist theory. Hua Guofeng, who succeeded him, was not an engineer. The person credited with everything China has achieved today, Deng Xiaoping, studied Marxist theory in France and Soviet Union. He was not an engineer. The first engineer to lead China was Jiang Zemin, and that was in 1989. But I need to tell you that China's first major proper expressway was built in 1993, 4 years into Jiang Zemin's leadership.
Yeah.
So we can say that China's great leap forward, it was from 89.
Yeah.
So whilst I agree with what you're saying, we cannot deny the role of the built environment, particularly for developing countries. And I think it's even not just engineering. I think it's more the sciences, right? The sciences, right? Let me read Professor Diamond's comment. Bernard, I cannot help commenting on what your guest just said about Lee Kuan Yew. Lee Kuan Yew did not obtain his law degree at Harvard. He got his basic law in Fitzwilliam College, Cambridge University. He also has further education at LSE.
Oh, sorry. Cambridge University, yes.
Yes. Adam Mensah will always correct you. He is my professor. In 67-68, I was in Churchill College, Cambridge. Listen to this. In 67-68, I was in Churchill College, Cambridge, when as Prime Minister, he and his wife came to spend their holidays in Churchill College, Cambridge, as guests of the college. There's this raging debate about Cambridge and Oxford, and I'm told that the reason the M1 is exactly the same distance between the two was that the rivalry in the UK was so much that they didn't trust that if they allowed just the engineers to build it, it would be close. So if you take a tape measure, the M1 is exactly in the middle of Oxfordshire and Cambridgeshire. Because of course the Cambridge had more the engineering types, Oxford had more the law types. I want to bring you in, but let me read another one. Bernard, both professions are important, but in Ghana now we need engineers to fix our railway system and our roads. This is Professor Mama Intuamensa. We need engineers to help us with industrialization and scientists on the whole for critical thinking and development. No offense meant, but with the Galamsey menace we face now, yes, lawyers are important, but engineers, agronomists, and ecologists are key. Lawyers differ, but engineers act. So that's an environmental scientist, Professor Ntiamensa, sending that comment as well. Let me read another one, if I will find it. Good. This was the one Kwesi Prempeh sent very earlier. He says, all the centuries America was leading China in most spheres, including brick and mortar, and still does in many areas. Was America led by engineers or by lawyers? I think the debate is interesting, but grossly oversimplified. Besides, all lawyers and engineers are not equal. An American or Chinese lawyer or engineer is probably not quite the same as a Ghanaian lawyer or engineer. So let's not get too taken in by the professional rivalry and solidarity. How are we training our lawyers or engineers, both as a technical matter and as a matter of orientation and values? And why are we not getting the best as a society from either? Let's not forget some of the questions we were given. David said, what type of development do we want? How do we get the right support for those in the profession? And how do we get them to produce better outcomes? Ace has the same point as well. Ace, let me bring you in. You trained straight from secondary school in law, right? So you are
Yes.
pure lawyer. One of my issues is that a lot of the young politicians I interview, they are lawyers. And some of them, I find them very book long. They talk big English, but I don't know what to say. Like they like argument, but I don't know where it's leading us. So there's a sense that they are using the law to get a space in their political party. So they may not necessarily even be passionate about it or not even be interested in doing any of the four things you said: dispute, attorney, transaction, or even advisory or academic law. Maybe you should add a fifth category. They want to use that as a stepping stone to politics. Is that a challenge? And how do we deal with that? Is it the interview process? How do we ensure that if somebody wants to become a lawyer, he's in for the right reason and the training sifts out any wrong assumptions about what he wants to do with it? Is
if someone is interviewed and the person is intimidated by the so-called loyally posturing of the interviewee, then the problem is with the interviewer and not the interviewee.
Okay, go on. Forget about that.
That's
Just focus on my question.
Yes. Yes. But what was the question again? Look,
No. My question is that it seems as if a lot of the young political class...
Okay. Let me explain that.
Yes.
Joining the professions historically brings social mobility.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so in times, they became the lawyers, engineers, and doctors. In fact, the original professions were three: divinity, medicine, and law. And it brought social mobility because when you didn't graduate, when you did your internships, when you finished your apprenticeship, you were professed in the village circle. That is why they became known as professions. It brings social mobility. Everybody notices it. The difference with the bar is that you get to wear those ugly wigs and gowns and take pictures, and everybody. And now with the growth of social media, everybody sees it, and it looks like something that is nice. But that is not the issue. Yes, so people go into law because it aids social mobility quicker, especially in these times when we are still a developing country. And I believe that democracy is a debate. Democracy is an argument. That is what we are doing today. You say what you think, I say what you think, we find the middle ground, and we move on from there. And so, yes, it does bring the social mobility, and so it attracts people. But the idea that more and more people are like there's a deluge of lawyers, it clearly has no statistical basis. It has no empirical basis. Like I said, my worry is more of the quality we are producing than the quantity, and that is what we need to look at, not only with lawyers but with every of the professions. And I heard some of the comments. My fellow at the academy made the comments, but I'll ask the question: we have the engineers, so if the problems exist while we have the engineers, is the solution producing more engineers? I think that we need to, you see, this is where I have a problem. We have all the engineering problems in Ghana. We have produced engineers since KNUST was founded. We still have the problems. The problem is not law. The problem is not probably the number of engineers. The problem is more structural, strategic. Governments who do not know their left from their right in how to deploy the resources that the universities churn out every year. Instead of addressing that, we are here saying which one is better or which one differs, and which one does not. That, I mean, I'm looking at the commentary. That lowers the quality of the debate and deprives us of the calmness with which to address the issue. So if we have the engineers and the roads are bad, the issue is, do we produce more of them? Or what should we do to make the engineering relevant? So we have all the lawyers. They are passing all the laws. As for Ghana, every law you want, we have passed it already. There are very few laws for us to pass, but we won't implement them. The implementation then becomes a government issue. So can we twist this and call government ministers to sit on TV and for them to be grilled that, okay, there are 8,000 engineers. How are you deploying them to fix Galamsey? Why are we not producing 1,000 mining engineers a year from UMAT and hiring them to Minerals Commission to go out there to supervise artisanal mining in such a way that the nation develops? To me, these are the things that we should be talking about, not which one is different and which one is taught to solve problems. If you are taught, if you are taught how to solve problems and the problems exist and you haven't learned how to solve them, then what is the use? So can we restructure this? And I'm saying that we should play this ball into the court of the political leaders.
Okay.
What are you doing with it? Let me give you one example. When I was in Legon, I had a friend whose research was on food stabilizers at the biochem department, and he found out that we could use ordinary starch as food stabilizers, and that ordinary cassava starch, and that we don't probably have to import stabilizers for our food industry. It is sitting in the as a research somewhere in Legon, unexplored. This has nothing to do with the number of lawyers or the number of engineers. We have a major thinking crisis as a nation, which we should be addressing. And passing out 800 lawyers probably gives us the platform to begin the discussion. But we would have served our nation well if this drops off in the next 2 or 3 days and we don't address the issue of the deployment of the huge human capital which goes into our universities, are produced and come up and move somewhere else. And law and engineering is my last point. It is true, when I have become a lawyer, I'm not now going to start studying math, physics, chemistry to go back to become a first-year engineering student. And there's an elephant in the room that I see that my colleagues who are lawyers have carefully avoided. When they become lawyers and they start seeing the kind of money they make in law, it's very, very difficult for them to move out. Then you are in the journalist industry. All your journalists who went to study law, they have stopped doing journalism. That's what I'm going to end.
All right, I think there's another question I need to address quickly, and this is to engineers. There appears to be a paucity of engineers in public discourse, generally. I was looking at President Mohammed's ministers. The closest to an engineer I found was the road minister, who's an architect. I think the interior minister is a planner. Most of them are either lawyers or teachers. So I feel like and I'm using that as an example. If I go to Parliament as well, there are 275.
Yeah.
I don't think I can count 5 engineers.
Right.
They are mostly legal people, education, community organizers, or just politicians. All right? So Ace is saying some of the issues have to do with the political class. But I feel like you need a critical mass of people within the political system who think a certain way. So while we are not saying one is better than the other, the paucity of engineers in public policy positions is an issue.
Yeah.
So let me come to, I'll start with Buedu on this before I come to you. Okay. Dr. Buedu, you decided to go into law because you felt policy was critical, right? And I think you're doing a great job where you are. Should we find ways of increasing the number of engineering types or science types within our public policy discourse? Because I feel like they are outnumbered grossly. Do you agree with my premise? And if you do, what do you think we should do to increase that?
Well, let me continue what Ace was saying another way, which David has also said. So I went into law because I noticed that we will need this, we need to fill this policy space. It is not because the Vice Chancellor called Professor Tuguba or the Minister of Education called the Vice Chancellor or the President called the Minister of Education and said that according to our planning in 20, 30 years' time, we're going to need this. So we need you to create an IT law program in your law department. No. So this goes to the issue of governance and planning. Okay. So if somebody does not dream on his pillow and says, we need to do this, then it's like we put everything on autopilot. Okay. And you can't govern a country that way. So this goes to the issue of governance that they were talking about in the planning. Okay. And I'll tell you something I saw when I moved to law from engineering. I practiced quite for some time as a computer programmer, moved to engineering, practiced for some time, and then moved to law. And one thing I noticed in studying in the social science, humanities environment is that they aim at training students with empathy. So they raise empathy, people skills, persuasion, collaboration, original thinking. These are the things I noticed that the courses, the reading lists were all gearing towards. And so you notice it's a little bit different from engineering, because in engineering and computer science, you are dealing with precision, accuracy, you are writing this software to achieve this, and you just can't deal with error, or you minimize errors. Okay. Whilst in this field, you are looking at empathy, people skills, collaboration. So it is not the lack of engineering or the lack of lawyers or the abundance of engineering or the abundance of lawyers that is the issue, but the quality, which is again what we've been saying. Okay, so look at Zuckerberg, Mark Zuckerberg appearing before the U.S. Senate, and he's being interviewed on what his software does. And then look at the TikTok CEO appearing before the U.S. Senate, and he's being interviewed. And you have lawyers who are interviewing the CEO of TikTok, and they ask a question: are you saying that your software does not steal private data? He says no. And then the senator says, can you deliver the binary code by tomorrow? Now, as soon as a senator uses a phrase like binary code, all programmers rise up. They know that this senator knows what he's talking about. So the quality of the person is the issue here. A leader, after all, does not have to be an engineer to be a leader. One thing you should notice, all around the world, it is not engineers who become presidents. It is the social scientists, it's the humanities who mostly become president because of this training they've received in empathy, people skills, etc. So that quality is what, if we mess, will create this seeming confusion that we've trained engineers who do not have the quality that they should have. We've trained lawyers who do not have the quality that they should have. These people then become ministers and presidents, and there's no planning, there's no governance, there's no questioning. We are on autopilot. We will then run into the kind of problems that we seem to be seeing. Okay. The data on engineering, for instance, I looked at President Akufo-Addo's speech in 2022. In that speech, President Akufo-Addo said we're producing 6,500 engineers per year, and he wanted to move it to 30,000. So I'm wondering where the data we are getting from, whether was President Akufo-Addo wrong in saying we produce 6,500. I've been a member of the engineering institution, and that data, I've looked for it, I can't find it. So it may be that it is not that we lack engineers, but I think that the quality, as earlier speakers have alluded to, is something that we have to look at.
Wonderful.
Governance issues, planning, and quality issues.
Taking it from there, yeah, I think I can deduce from what he says that we probably need more empathetic engineers and a few more structured social scientists. for a better society. But I think you agree with my premise that we obviously need more engineering types in public policy discourse, because if you just look at our society clearly, there's a lot of things to be built, which is the analogy Paul used. What are your thoughts?
So I think we look at politicians from two, well, not necessarily politicians, but also governance structure. But politicians who are elected are usually coming from the party systems that we have, most of which is driven by propaganda. And if we're going to be fair with each other, if we're talking about propaganda, who's best suited to do propaganda than the people who can quote the laws, speak the laws, jump into conclusions and make all the verbose analysis. So you find that a lot of times engineers are staying back from that kind of propaganda approach to politics. The only times that you'd find us are places where we are backed by laws to be appointed. So you'd find that if there are certain laws that we do have that actually requires us to appoint engineers in certain roles. So the Minister for Roads and I think the Road Act supports that. The Energy Commission Act also ensures that the positions at VRA, Gridco, etc. are run by engineers. But truly, the mindset of engineers are focused more on technical problem solving than general problem solving. And I'm sure you've heard me speak about this several times, that as engineers, we need to be advocate-minded first, and that when you're advocate-minded, even the things you do in the built environment are actually things that you're doing for society. So then it drives you to have a certain mindset when you're providing technical solutions. That same mindset would engage us to do more politics and go into public sector work. So it truly is a mindset thing. I agree with the lawyer engineer who just spoke. We shouldn't forget that our nation also thrives on places where mentorship is important. So we haven't had examples of engineers who have actually delivered in the political sector. I feel that once that changes and we have more people going into politics, we'll see a bigger drive in that area. So we just need to encourage more engineers to be more public sector minded than anything else.
So I'm thinking closing comments. I'll start with Hene Ekus Hene. So you tried to re-engineer our constitution. I don't know how that went because you came up with a lot of ideas. And I think the man who headed the Constitution Review Committee, he was magnanimous enough to receive those presentations, and he sort of listened to you intently. How did that experiment go? Did that convince you that you had more of a space in public discourse and that more engineers should be given the chance to discuss some of our social issues in a more meaningful way?
Yeah, no. I would disagree with my fellow engineer a little bit. You know, for me, my engagement with public discourse in the politics, I've felt very comfortable. I know other engineers who have also been in there. I mean, SIGA, SIGA was one of my ideas that I presented with the sort of asset management, and then we separated both of them, and SIGA got done. I drafted the legislation with Mangoa, and I drafted the legislation for the asset management as well. So
you keep making reference to Mangoa. You are referring to your friend's nickname. Who is Mangoa?
Oh, okay. So Mangoa actually used to be the chief legal person for Ministry of Finance.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah,
fine.
So I mean, Ace probably knows her and whatnot. But for me, I think it really is not the reason why you don't see a lot of engineers probably in the political stuff is that it actually goes back to what Ace said. The country itself doesn't really sort of have the right structure such that you actually have people who go to the bottom and then manage systems and gradually come up and whatnot. You have 7,000 lawyers in Accra, right? Well, how come they haven't been deployed in the hinterland and whatnot? There is legislation as part of local government that they are supposed to hire lawyers, right? But it doesn't happen. It's the same for engineers. What it is that the structure, it's sort of a bit of a clusterfuck society. So what happens is that you're not getting enough people who are rising up. So when you do the politics at the top, you're just selecting people who basically can do politicking, right? Engineers can do it, right? The problem is the engineers actually also are in the same system, and the structure is really where, we're sort of struggling with. And this is where you actually need the type of leader and understand the type of heavy thinking that needs to be done to structure it such that you actually can get the environment to do job creation. You can actually have true sort of decentralization and whatnot. So I think that's really why you're not seeing a lot more engineers involved, because what happens is engineers are more likely to actually end up in Kumasi working there and not be part of the the political structure. In China, engineers actually have layers, right? You go to the village administration level and you are hired as an engineer, so you rise up. You know, all their leaders who actually supposedly did not have engineering degrees, they have had engineering minds. They've managed systems from the ground up, right? So for me, I think it's more of what Ace is saying, that the structure itself is sort of not right. So it doesn't matter how many engineers or how many lawyers you produce. The fact of the matter is that resource deployment is not happening in a very efficient way. So you have them all running around. So you get this impression that somehow there's more of one than the other. The roads are not getting fixed because in every village and every town, nobody knows who manages it. Nobody knows who's supposed to be assigned to basically do the engineering. So that's where I think really a lot of the challenges lie.
Thank you. Let me give David his final thoughts. David, your previous answer was really thought-provoking. Re-engineering Ghana's transformation polygon, ethics, engineering, law, and finance. And I felt like you should talk a bit about the ethics, because whether you're an engineer, a lawyer, a journalist, or whatever, I believe that one of the problems of Ghana is the ethical question, right? And you also talk about professionals, and I think you've been doing some work with them, trying to get them to be more active. How critical are professionals to our nation's development, and how can we unleash them better? This is my final question to you.
I think, like I said earlier, is a national psyche issue, and I have to address an issue made by your in-studio guest, and I heard he say it was an unfair point. I think she needs to take a second look at her position regarding who does propaganda and all that. I don't want to belabor that point. But at times they underrate the rate at which lawyers play a role in engineering. I'll give you just a couple of examples. The entire built environment in Ghana, and I pardon me to be personal here, is regulated by 3 key laws: LI 1630, the building code, the Land Use and Spatial Planning Act 925, and the Land Use and Spatial Planning Regulations LI 2384. I wrote the entire Land Use Spatial Planning Act and the LI 2384. There is nothing in it which is quote and unquote law. It's totally engineering and spatial planning. I wrote everything. It's public record, paid for by the World Bank, and that. We play a significant role in what happens to engineering. And I've told you, I'm always in the middle of engineers. Another matter of public record is perhaps the largest ongoing road project in this country, which I structured. So lawyers do play a role in setting a pattern for society. And again, going back to that lecture I gave to the engineers, I pointed out something and I want to relate to that. The engineering profession, like all professions, need to let us reimagine the society. And I'll give you 2 examples. I was engaged by an international financial institution to help do a major project in this country, and I needed to hire an engineering firm. When I listed the type of engineers I was looking for, foundation engineers, structural engineers, architects, etc., I needed them in one place. Every single of the professionals I was looking for were in Ghana, much more experienced than the one I recommended to be hired from Europe. But they were all not in one firm. They were all in some 3-man, 2-man firm, etc. I ended up hiring an engineering firm from UK, Mott McDonald's, employing 15,000 engineers. Now, if I come to Ghana and look at the closest engineering firms, Acorn, Sabuwachi and Partners, Chumbafu and Partners, Tomtran, some of these engineering firms were set up much earlier, but they don't have the same size. Then I moved to the public sector. Tahal Engineering is owned by the Israeli government. Moved its headquarters to Amsterdam. They have over 100,000 lawyers across the world. Its equivalent is AESL in Ghana, which we have killed. How have the engineers been able to grow the engineering profession so that I have a significant say? You know, there is something that we lose sight of, and I think my colleague doctor made reference to it. Under the Local Government Act and under the LUSPA Act, it is required for each city to have a special planner as an example. Now we sit here and we allow politicians to divide the country into districts, 261. At some point, KNUST has stopped training special planners. Now they have reintroduced it. There were only 70 special planners in the country of 260 districts.
Wow.
Now these districts, some of us have recommended that you should have joint planning boards. They are all spelled out in the law. You need an architect for each district and a lawyer for each district. Now, if you have a country where the law makes a provision, but the districts can neither hire engineers, nor architects, nor lawyers. It's a national psyche. Yeah. It is not about a profession doing propaganda or not doing propaganda. Law gives a pattern to society. It doesn't matter whether the profession is medicine or not. You need a pattern, and that pattern is set by the logical reasoning that law sets itself. So we have to work together. That's why I say, if we want to transform, then we need a convergence of the professions, and the professional bodies should themselves assert themselves and their organization in such a way that they can influence the society and how the society is shaped.
Wonderful. I have a minute. I have 2 minutes, so I'm going to give one to Ace and one to Dr. Boadu. So Ace, I don't know what you can do in a minute, but I think you should just give us your closing thoughts.
Well, I will give you a minute. You got me here. 1 minute to address the point that David addressed. To your in-studio guest,
yes.
It's grossly unfair to say that politics is all about propaganda and that you go through that. That is unfair.
I would need to address that.
Listen, nobody owes any profession in this country a seat at any table. Absolutely. You got to get up, dust up, and go compete for the positions, right? If all the lawyers in Ghana left politics, it won't create the space for engineers if they don't want to step up. And so if we think that we have something to contribute to the development of the country, let's step up and offer our professional views as to how to develop it. It does not lie. And I thought that this discussion had pivoted beautifully away from that comparison, but we seem to have gone back there. There must be a reason why, Bernard, that in how many years of independence, there's not been a single president elected from KNUST. We must investigate that, and that's how I'm going to end it.
I don't think Samens will be very happy with you, the way you are ending this KNUST.
That's a fact.
Should I address?
Yeah, Mr. Boadu, I hope you are not going to address what my studio guest said, because I think everyone has so let me just give you, Dr. Boadu, a comment to close, and I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I would say that we need to elevate the discussion. It's not just about lawyers and engineers. How about plumbers? How about tailors? How about doctors? How about teachers? And it's a problem that cuts across. We talk about standards falling in legal training. I'm coming from engineering and computer science, and I can tell you how standards have fallen in there also. And we have also talked about planning and governance and how standards have also fallen at that level because we seem to have put our country on autopilot. Nobody seems to be planning anything. How are we resourcing the universities? How are we thinking together to be sure that we are planning for the next 20, 30 years to decide these are the professions that we need?
Thank you. Yeah, since everybody is asking you to go back on the point around propaganda, I think you should use 30 seconds to tidy that up, then we close.
I think the key thing, and I said this from the beginning, is that it's a symbiotic relationship. We've acknowledged that from the beginning. ACE very much sits on our ADR board at Ghana Institution of Engineering. As David has said, I was actually chair when he did the program. So we do respect both parties. Yeah. This had nothing to do with that. It was an explanation to talk about how political parties are actually run. So true to it, there's no way to jab any one profession or the other. In closing, close, and I truly believe that the national development agenda must be broadened. And just like the last person said, there's so many factors that need to be looked at, including the fact that we have to run the nation with a mindset of research and development. And for that, I think that's where we are as a nation.
I'll end with a quote. A country that despises excellence in plumbing as a low profession and tolerates mediocrity in philosophy as a high profession will have neither excellent plumbing nor philosophy. Neither its pipes nor theories can hold water. So think about that. Thank you, Iya Kujeto, engineer. Hini Eku Kwapong, engineer as well. Is Ankoma, lawyer. David Fosu, lawyer. And of course, Dr. Kweku Buedu, engineer turned lawyer. My name is Ben Adable. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.